My 26-year-old son looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're a worthless failure, Dad. I'm embarrassed to even call you my father." 3 weeks later, he opened his first paycheck at his dream job, and saw my name printed right at the top as the company owner. What happened next destroyed him emotionally and changed our relationship forever. But before I tell you how this story ends, I need you to understand how we got here. Because what my son discovered about his failure of a father will shock you as much as it shocked him. And if you're ready to hear a story about pride, prejudice, and the moment when reality hits harder than a freight train, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because you're going to want to follow this channel for more incredible true stories. Trust me, this one will leave you speechless. My name is Robert, and 30 years ago, I was nobody special. I was a 25-year-old high school dropout working at a small auto parts store in Detroit, married to my high school sweetheart Linda, with a newborn son named Jake. We lived in a tiny apartment above a bakery, and every month was a struggle to pay rent. But when I held Jake for the first time, I made him a promise: he would never want for anything. He would have every opportunity one never had. The auto parts store where I worked was failing. The owner, an old man named Frank, was ready to close it down. That's when I made the biggest gamble of my life. I borrowed every penny I could from family, friends, even took a loan against Linda's engagement ring, and I bought that failing store. Linda thought I was crazy. "Robert," she said, "you don't know anything about running a business." She was right. I didn't. But I knew cars, I knew parts, and I knew what customers needed. For the first 2 years, I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I was the cashier, the inventory manager, the delivery driver, and the janitor. Linda handled the books while taking care of baby Jake. We survived on peanut butter sandwiches and sheer determination. But slowly, things started to turn around. I began to understand what other auto parts stores were doing wrong. They were selling parts, I was solving problems. When someone came in with a broken car, I didn't just sell them a part. I helped them understand what was wrong and how to fix it. Jake was too young to remember those early years. He doesn't remember the nights I came home exhausted, my hands black with grease, counting pennies to make sure we could buy his diapers. All he knows is the success that came later. By the time Jake was in elementary school, I had 3 stores. By middle school, I had opened 10 locations across Michigan. But here's the thing, I never changed who I was. I still wore work clothes, still got my hands dirty, still treated every customer like family. Jake was embarrassed by me from early on. When other kids' fathers came to school events in suits, I showed up in my work uniform with grease still under my fingernails. When they asked what their dad did for work, Jake would mumble something about car stuff and change the subject. I tried to explain to him that I was building something bigger than just auto parts stores. I was creating jobs for hundreds of people, solving problems for thousands of customers. But to Jake, I was just the dad who smelled like motor oil and couldn't help him with his advanced math homework. Linda tried to bridge the gap between us. "Jake doesn't understand what you've accomplished," she'd tell me. "He will when he's older." But as Jake grew up, the distance between us only got wider. Meanwhile, my business kept growing. We expanded into automotive services, opened a chain of quick lube centers, started manufacturing our own line of specialty parts. By the time Jake was in high school, Patterson Automotive had become one of the largest automotive service companies in the Midwest. But I kept a low profile. I reinvested profits back into the business, lived modestly, drove the same pickup truck I'd had for years. I figured the success would speak for itself eventually. I was wrong. Jake saw my modest lifestyle and assumed it meant I wasn't successful. He saw my work clothes and assumed I was just another blue-collar worker. He saw my lack of college degree and assumed I was uneducated. Jake was brilliant in school. Straight A's, captain of the debate team, accepted to Northwestern University on a partial academic scholarship. I was so proud of him, but Jake seemed determined to distance himself from everything I represented. During his freshman year, Jake came home for Christmas and announced that he was majoring in business administration. "I'm going to run a real company someday, Dad," he said. Not some small-time operation like yours. That stung, but I bit my tongue. I figured once he learned about business in college, he'd appreciate what we'd built. Junior year, Jake brought his girlfriend home for dinner. When she asked what I did for a living, Jake answered before I could speak, "My dad owns a few car repair shops." Nothing too exciting. A few car repair shops. By then, Patterson Automotive employed over 800 people across 50 locations in 5 states. Our annual revenue was approaching $100 million. But to Jake, I was still just a guy who fixed cars. Senior year was the worst. Jake was interviewing for jobs at major corporations, wearing expensive suits I'd paid for, using connections I'd helped him make through my business network, though he never knew that part. One night, he came home frustrated after a job interview didn't go well. "I can't compete with kids whose fathers are executives and lawyers," he complained. Having a mechanic for a dad doesn't exactly open doors. Linda looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Tell him," she whispered. But I was too stubborn, too hurt by his constant dismissal of everything I'd worked for. Jake graduated from Northwestern with honors and moved to Chicago to start his career. He found an apartment in an expensive neighborhood and started job hunting for serious corporate positions. For 6 months, he struggled to find the right job. His college degree was impressive, but he lacked experience. He was living off credit cards and the modest financial support Linda and I provided, though he never asked me directly, always went through his mother. That's when I made a decision that Linda disagreed with. I used some of my business connections Jake didn't know I had, to help him get interviews at several companies, including Meridian Logistics, one of the largest transportation and supply chain companies in Chicago. Jake landed the job at Meridian as a junior business analyst. Good salary, benefits, room for advancement. He was thrilled, and for the first time in years, he called me directly to share good news. But then he said something that cut deeper than any knife. "Dad, I finally did it. I got a real job at a real company. I won't have to be like you, struggling with some small business forever. I'm going to be somebody important." "Jake," I said quietly, "I'm proud of you, but..." He cut me off. "Dad, I love you, but let's be honest. You're a worthless failure as a businessman. You've been running the same tiny operation for decades. I'm embarrassed to even call you my father when I'm around my new colleagues. I'm everything you never managed to become." The line went quiet. Linda was watching me from across the room, and she could see my heart breaking in real time. "Jake," I said one more time, "there are things you don't understand." "What's to understand, Dad?" "You fix cars. I analyze corporate strategy. You never made anything of yourself. I'm going places you could never imagine. Just, please don't mention what you do for work if you ever meet any of my new friends." He hung up. And something inside me snapped. That night, Linda and I had the most serious conversation of our marriage. She was furious, not at Jake, but at me. "Robert, this has gone far enough," she said. "You've let this boy disrespect you for years because you were too proud to tell him the truth about what you've built. Now he's calling you a failure? Enough." She was right. I had been protecting Jake's feelings for so long that I'd forgotten to protect my own dignity. The next morning, I made some calls. You see, Meridian Logistics had been one of Patterson Automotive's biggest clients for over 10 years. We serviced their entire fleet of delivery vehicles across the Midwest. More than that, I personally knew the CEO, David Meridian, quite well. I also discovered something interesting. Jake had been hired into a department that specifically managed vendor relationships for the Automotive Services Division. In other words, his job would eventually involve managing the contract with my company. I had a choice. I could call Jake, explain everything, and try to rebuild our relationship with honesty. Or I could let him learn the truth the hard way. After years of being dismissed, insulted, and called a failure by my own son, I chose the hard way. I called David Meridian and had a very interesting conversation. I explained the situation with Jake and asked for a favor, not to hurt my son, but to teach him a lesson he desperately needed to learn. "Robert," David laughed, "your son has no idea who his father is, does he?" "None whatsoever." "Well," David said, "I think it's time for some education." 3 weeks later, Jake received his first official assignment. He was to conduct a comprehensive review of all major vendor contracts in the Automotive Services Division, starting with their largest contractor, Patterson Automotive. Music builds with suspense. Jake was excited. This was his chance to show his analytical skills, to prove he belonged in the corporate world. He spent days preparing, researching this Patterson guy who apparently ran some automotive company. The morning of his first vendor review meeting, Jake was handed a thick file containing all of Patterson Automotive's contracts, financial records, and corporate information. He was flipping through it when he froze. There, on the corporate registration documents, was a name he recognized: Robert Patterson, founder and CEO. His hands started shaking. He turned to the company profile page and saw my photograph, the same man he'd called a worthless failure just weeks earlier. But it got worse. As Jake read through the documents, he realized the scope of what I'd built. Patterson Automotive wasn't some small operation, it was a $200 million empire with over 1,200 employees, contracts with dozens of Fortune 500 companies, and a reputation as one of the most innovative automotive service providers in the country. The company that had hired him, the company he was so proud to work for, paid my company over $15 million annually. His salary, the salary he was so proud of, was essentially being paid by his failure of a father. Jake's supervisor walked over and said, "Patterson, you look like you've seen a ghost. Everything okay?" "Patterson?" Jake whispered. "Yeah, funny coincidence, right? You have the same last name as our biggest vendor. Robert Patterson, brilliant guy, built an incredible company from nothing. Started with one tiny auto parts store and turned it into this massive operation. Real American success story." Jake excused himself and ran to the bathroom, where he threw up from the shock and shame. That evening, Jake drove the 3 hours from Chicago to our house without calling first. Linda and I were having dinner when we heard him pull up outside. He walked in with tears streaming down his face, still wearing his expensive suit, clutching the Patterson Automotive file in his hands. "Dad," he whispered, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He collapsed into a chair and started sobbing, not crying, but full body sobbing like a child. "I called you a failure," he kept saying. "I called you worthless. But you built all this. You're not a failure, Dad. I'm the failure. I'm the one who's worthless." I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. "Jake, you're not worthless. You're my son, and I love you. But you needed to learn that success doesn't always look the way you think it should." "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Why did you let me disrespect you for all these years?" "Because," I said, "I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I own. I wanted you to respect hard work, not just wealth. I wanted you to understand that a man's worth isn't measured by his title or his clothes, but by what he builds and how he treats people." Jake looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "Can you ever forgive me? Can I earn back your respect?" "Son," I said, "you never lost my love. But yes, you'll need to earn back my respect. Starting with how you treat people, all people, regardless of what they do for work." 6 months later, Jake left his job at Meridian and came to work for Patterson Automotive. Not as the owner's son, but as an entry-level employee. He wanted to learn the business from the ground up, to understand what I'd built and why I'd built it. Today, Jake is our Vice President of Operations, and he's earned every bit of that title through hard work and dedication. More importantly, he's become a man I'm proud to call my son. And he never, ever looks down on anyone because of their job title. If this story moved you, I'd absolutely love it if you'd hit that like button right now and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever judged someone unfairly based on their appearance or job? Have you learned a difficult lesson about respect and humility? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your story. And if you want to hear more incredible true stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We share amazing stories about family, life lessons, and the moments that change everything. Remember, success isn't always what it appears to be, and the people we dismiss might just be the ones holding our future in their hands. Until next time, treat everyone with respect. You never know who you're really talking to.